just shouldn't be like that, and my son's experience right now is not like that. Yo, everyone, what's going on? Welcome to episode, what is this, 121, I believe it is, of the podcast. It's a pretty heavy one. I got into my take on the George Floyd situation for the majority of it and just really talked through a lot of emotions I was going through after just soaking up a lot of coverage from the past, I'd say 48, 76, 72 hours. And after that, also got into another article related to Japan and a few other. It's kind of deep, So if you're not really into that deep shit, my apologies. But I just talked through pretty much. Y'all were my therapist in this episode. I'm not gonna lie. I just really talked through a lot of emotions that I was processing, throughout the course of the day as kind of I, took in a lot of media and really got the scope of what was happening in America today. And I'm sure you'll be able to tell that from the episode. So, yeah, again, thanks for listening if you make it all the way through. If it's a bit too much for you, I don't blame you for turning it off. I'm sure wherever you are, you probably have an overload of that type of information. But I did try to give it from my perspective, not just, point blank what I think, like from the perspective of if you listen to it from the perspective of someone living in Japan, seeing this type of situation, I think you might get some type of perspective on the kind of how the distance between you and your home country might affect you in situations like this. Again, depending on who you are, your background or whatever. But hey, if this episode isn't your cup of tea, just wait for the next one. I really don't blame you. But whether you listen or you don't, enjoy. Yo, everybody, what's going on? It's episode, what is this? Episode 120, 121? Yeah, 121. Episode 121. You can tell I'm not in the normal woohoo kind of mood. No alcohol tonight. Yeah, it's just one of those. Hold on 1 second. Sorry. Let me adjust some of this equipment a little bit closer. Yeah, it's just one of those days. The end of May. If you're listening to this when I upload it, if you're watching this online, I'm pretty sure, you can kind of imagine what I'm dealing with. Of course, the protests, everything, the George Floyd situation in America. I'm just kind of watching it unfold here in Japan, and it's not, it's not. I don't know. It's a very surreal feeling, because I was really thinking about this a lot today, just catching up on the situation, especially today as the situation kind of developed and escalated in Japan time today over the past 24 hours, beyond Minneapolis and I've been kind of really trying to search my feelings. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about this a lot during this episode from my perspective here in Japan. I'm sure you've been beaten over the head. Oh, that's a terrible way of saying that. I'm sure you've been, bombarded with information and videos and things like that. So I'm not gonna retrench that. I've been watching comments and things like that from people online, on TV. I've heard a wide range of emotion from a lot of different people. It's really kind of weird watching this from Japan, especially because I'm getting kind of fragments and glimpses of it, but at the same time I'm very disconnected from the situation because of where I'm at, which I'm fucking walking my dog, and I think that's personally it's a good thing. I've been thinking about this a lot today. of course, personally, on an individual level, it's a good thing because I'm very much detached from a lot of the pain and anger I see on people's faces, But at the same time, of course, I understand that because, you know, I was, moving away from America, as a youth and things like that. I was very much in that environment, especially as a young black man in that environment. So I can remember that those kind of feelings that would spark this type of emotion that's flaring up all over America. I get that part, but me as a 38-year-old man who's been living in Japan for, you know, coming up on half my life, that emotion, that raw emotion is not something that's there on a daily basis. I don't live on my life on edge like I know a lot of people in America do, and have been doing, seems like increasingly over the past few years. So I've kind of missed that part. So it's kind of, it's kind of a weird thing. And especially because, this whole Corona situation and the timing of it, I'm not going to get into that, but of everything is kind of watching things develop and you get kind of conspiratorial about things and I'm not the individual situation that happened, but just as far as the government response and the whole police state thing and the whole it can you can kind of it can go kind of wild. So I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I'm just kind of taking events as I see them, as I perceive them, online. I don't, with a grain of salt from mainstream news as well, because I'm not on the ground to kind of like see and feel and get a grasp of what's going on. So I can only kind of like, that's the only, like through my TV is the only way, on the internet is the only way I can really get a glimpse of like what's going on. But it's like, again, it's very fragmented, so it's kind of weird. Like, and that's kind of how it is, like, living in Japan, I was checking online, I saw there were a few Japanese protests as well, here in Tokyo and Shibuya, which is another thing. I was sitting here thinking for, like, 20 minutes how I felt about that. Like, Japanese people with signs like, fuck the police, is a slippery slope for me, and it's very tricky. And like, I came to the conclusion I don't know how I feel about it. Like I just can't. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, from a Japan side, just because, like, from my understanding, like I'll just take the Japanese protest point. Like, I can understand, especially, there's a segment of the Japanese population that really likes to show their solidarity for things, and shit like that is a way that they do it. But for me, it's not from a place of the conflict is not from a place of understanding in a visceral kind of sense. It's just more of like, yeah, that's wrong. Everyone else thinks it's wrong. I want to show I think it's wrong too. Let's do it. Is my perception of it. And, because there isn't that, like, the police force in general in Japan isn't, you've heard me say it, police in Japan are not law enforcers. They are peacekeepers. And I've had encounters with the police here. I had one recently that I didn't talk about on the podcast. I'm not going to get into it here now. It was, that was kind of upsetting to me. But I could very much take that police encounter, even though it was upsetting, over the shit that you deal with in America any day, or that you can potentially deal with in America any day of the week, right? So, and again, I'm trying to, again, this is just a topic that's been on my mind for talk of the day. It's gonna be the talk of the week. Hopefully, it becomes the talk of the fucking decade, and something happens. For I don't know. You can tell I'm a bit fragile about this, especially if you're watching this on video. But just because, like, again, it's a lot to process when you're very much outside of the situation, and that's I'd say one of the. It's like a double-edged sword, like living here. When this type of shit happens, it's like, you know, you're happy, but at the same time you're, you know, very much empathetic for what's going on. Like, or me, I'll say my personality, especially, you know, some people are extremely enraged and things like that. Like, I can't, you know, my vision of the effect that I'd like, the positive effect that I'd like to have on America won't allow, and just my point of view right now of life in the world at my age where I'm at right now, won't allow me to become enraged. You know, I think for me to sit on this podcast and be like, you know, fuck the police and fuck all this shit and go all off and you know, put on a show. I'm not saying people who are doing that, you know, online are putting on a show or putting on a spectacle. I'm talking about me personally. Like, you know, that raw emotion, anger is not in me, you know, and my point is, I don't walk around with it every day, you know, and that is kind of like a gift in my everyday life. In this situation, it feels like a bit of a burden, you know, because, you know, my people, black people, you know, are going through something, you know, and not only black people. It seems like America, like in my country. Let me say that, my country is going through something, and, you know, I'm not there, and I don't want to be there. You know, that's the thing. I don't want to be there, and it's real complicated. Like, I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I can't, you know, pretend like I got answers where I can't. Like, I saw Killer Mike, like his. If you have a chance to watch, if you haven't seen it, like, watch. You know, I don't know if you know who Killer Mike is. You know, he's a great in the past, like in the 2000s, he was a great rapper, and he's, you know, very much outspoken person, political activist, like really, 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 really intelligent guy. And I just listened to him and watched him cry, you know, for his city, and like really call on people to wake up and activate in a constructive way. And man, like, you know, like, my image of the change that I'd like to affect in America, you know, would come as a result of me living my dreams here in Japan, you know, and hopefully I can get in the economic situation where I have, you know, the economic power, take some of this Japan money back to America, and, you know, affect political change, inspire young people, give scholarships, grants, do whatever the fuck I want. Like, you know, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. But situations like this is just like, you feel kind of fucking powerless, you know, and you know, I haven't talked to my wife about this. Like I can't talk to my wife about this right now. Like, that's the thing. Like, you know, I'm talking to you guys about it before I talk to my wife about it. Like, I'm sure she hasn't seen it yet. It'll probably pop up in Japanese news, a day or two. And I was just looking at shit. You know, she came home today, and I was just like, I just don't have it in me to you know, because I know the questions that are gonna come. I know the discussion, you know, it's gonna be a weighty kind of like, this is racism in America 101 type shit. And yeah, I just wasn't in the mood for it today. Like, and I'm not in the mood for it. And, looking at my son, like, you heard me talking about it before. Like, you know, um, yeah, they're like, just, this is the type of shit that, makes me have some type of apprehension about mm, my child and hopefully not with future children going to America when they get older. Living in America and being in America by themselves. Like, and like for me, I was thinking about it. It's like easier. It's so much easier to like come from a situation of you know danger and tension and conflict, which is America, and come to Japan, which is a fucking peaceful ass place. Like you got earthquakes, you got fucking hurricanes, you got like natural disasters and shit, but my daily life is peaceful as fuck. Like, and I appreciate it because I've come from, and I'm like, I'm not from like the hood, like it's I've been in some experiences. I've seen some things in my life. I'm not really gonna highlight and be like, yo, well, I had it, like I'm from the bottom. I'm not gonna say no shit like that. Like, but I know what it is, and to come from that to come here, like, it's really, really refreshing not to deal with a lot of that bullshit on a daily basis. And but the thing is, like, it's funny because I think about it sometimes, like, you know, I'm very much aware that some of the survival mechanisms and survival like ways of thinking that I have in my life, like just growing up from America, like I don't need in Japan, but I just have it, like like I know I'm aware of my surroundings. I'm aware of my area. I'm aware of who comes into my area. I'm aware of who's in my space. Like what's going on down. I hear a noise. What's going on down the street? Who's you know, like I'll be somewhere and I'm driving and I'll just be like telling my wife, "Oh, did you see that? Whoa, look at that thing over there." And she's like, "Where? What's going on?" I'm like, "No, that thing. You didn't see that guy, that car, that person in the car sleeping. Like, oh." I need to pull over there. That person riding past my house. That's the person who lives that way because his motorcycle always goes that way. I know that because he's the guy with the white helmet. He has a helmet cam because I'm observant of everything that goes on in my area. You don't really need to do that like on a day-to-day basis. Typically in Japan, of course, there are some areas that have higher crime or whatever, but there's nowhere it's fucking utopia. But generally speaking, like my radar doesn't need to be on, the way it does need to be in America. And it makes me so apprehensive every time I have to, like, me going back to America by myself, I'm cool with it. Because I'm like, it's only me. But when I'm responsible for my wife, when I'm responsible for my son, in the past I've been responsible, for other people, like, that is very tense for me, just because like I'm aware of things that could happen, potential things that could happen, and I have to be on point not only for myself but for other people. And if this shit, I mean, for me, every indication like this shit's gonna keep going on, like I hate to say it, but this shit, I hope it stops tomorrow, but it's just been going on for hundreds of years. This just, come on. Like, anyway, my son, man, like, I've said it before, I've alluded to it before, like, but this, like, I saw a video of, like, a dad, basically stepping on his son's neck and recording it, trying to teach us, like I don't know how much it was for it to make a statement, how much it was really like done, genuine. I don't know, but I'm not gonna question any father, but teaching something like, yo, if an officer's on you, this is what you do, this is how you. And I'm like, that's traumatic for a kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, that stifles somebody. And my son right now, he is so free and so just jolly. Like, we went to the fucking park today, and like some older dude, like, he was on his little, my son was on his little scooter, and he's riding around, and like, he was a little bit ahead of me, and he swerved a little bit, and like, he got into a little bit of a bump with an older guy who was on a little older bicycle, and the guy kind of said something to him. I was a little bit ahead of him, like they were a little bit ahead of me. I just kind of watched this situation from afar. I let it play out because I wanted to see like what would happen. Of course I'm not gonna rush in and be like, yo, what the fuck you saying to my son? But purposely, like the guy, he wasn't like barking on my son or anything, but I think he just said like, oh, be careful, or like, he was a little grumpy older guy. He had maybe an expensive like racing bike. He should have been more careful being around like a kid that small. But there are other people in the path, and Japan's not that big, so I can understand how they got to. I could see it kind of developing before it happened, but um, whatever. So he kind of said something to my son, and then like I could see his face. He was a little bit upset, and he kind of looked back and saw me, and was like, okay, and left it there and kind of kept going. But my son was like, oh fuck, and so he ran to me crying or whatever, and I was kind of like laughing. I was like, good, I kind of want him to experience that type of adversity. I don't want to coddle him. I'm like, yo, you're gonna have to deal with people like, in your face about some shit sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna have to you're gonna be confronted with adversity, and those type of things you don't really get exposed to. I mean, he's 3 years old. Like, I'm not gonna be like, go punch him in the face. Like, I'm not gonna say no shit, but the point is, like, I know, like, he's so, in a way, sheltered in his life in Japan, in a good way, especially at this age. Like, and I know there's parents, like, talking to their kids his age, like 3 years old, 5 years old, telling their kids, like, yo, these motherfuckers out to kill you, and I'm not judging those people. It just shouldn't be like that, and my son's experience right now is not like that. And for him in the future to be around people who had those experiences, or other people who might see him in a negative kind of way, in like in the context that cause these type of situations, it's a bit unsettling, and I mean, I'm gonna have to talk to my wife about it. I'm gonna have to, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just, I'm happy I live in this fucking country. I'm very happy I live in this country. I'm happy for the experiences I've had. I'm happy for growing up in America. But times like this, man, it makes you question a lot of shit. Like, and I'm talking, of course, from like just America, of course. But I'm just saying, like, looking at America from afar, it does, man. Like, and especially having kids now, it does. It changes everything for me, and especially having a boy, especially having a son, that, yeah, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I'm still kind of taking. Sorry, this is deep shit. I'm sorry, but it is what it is. I'm kind of committed to just saying how I feel about a lot of different issues. Some are fun, some are funny. I've kind of gotten deep on some shit before, but yeah, like I don't know. I just kind of wanted to speak my mind on that situation, and a lot of it is just talk through some shit, because a lot of, like, honestly, a lot of it is like, what the fuck, like, kind of going on in my head right now. And mm, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of shit I was thinking about saying on the podcast, and I was thinking through a lot of shit all day. But at the end of the day, man, like, yeah, it's just, yeah, it's just sad, like, on so many levels, so many levels. And mm, I mean, it did, but let me say this, for me personally, it does double down on my conviction for the things that I want to do in the future. Now, and I'm saying, for me first, foremost, for myself, then for my family, then for, communities that I come from and my parents come from, because my parents are immigrants as well. I'm first generation American. I don't know if I told you, my parents are from Guyana, South America, and both of my parents are, and so, you know, yeah, like, I just want to make, I don't know, I'm not gonna talk too much about this shit, but because I do have one more thing I want to talk about, but I'll just say, let me just try to say one thing. Wherever you are, if you're listening to this, just, I would say, listen to that Killer Mike. I'll probably post it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to post a link to it. I'm going to look for it and post a link to it, because he said what he said it way better than I could say it. And so if you do listen, I'll just say, just take a second. T.I.'s on in the beginning. He's like, yo, but the clip that I saw, but um, just watch what Killer Mike says, and yeah, yeah, and I'll just wrap that part up with that. There's one other thing which I want to talk about as well, a little bit in the same vein, kind of what I was talking about in the beginning. But there's an article which I read today, which kind of, another thing, dealing with life here in Japan was a bit unsettling as well. It's a Japan Today article. Japan revises the law to make more part-timers join pension program. Now, this is some shit that got snuck under the radar, which is the shit that I don't personally like. I'm not a fan of this type of shit, which I feel like governments really do, and are really doing. And wherever you are, really pay attention to what your, state, local, national government is doing. I won't get into the whole corona thing. I won't get into the economic thing. I won't get into the macroeconomic thing. I'm not gonna get into any of that shit, right? I'm gonna just, for me, again, I'm sticking to Japan, okay? But for me, reading this article, like, basically, if you don't know about Japan's pension system is fucked. Japan's economy is fucked, okay? Like, Japan's economy is really fucked because of the Asian population here. Like, just, oh gosh, like, I think, like, if I remember clearly, I saw like a visual representation of it. I think right now, 5 people, either 5 or 7 people, I want to say, is supporting, pension wise, paying for the pension of every one pensioner. I think in like, sometime in the future, it'll be turned to 3 to 1, and then at some point it'll turn to 2 to 1 or some shit like that. So basically, Japan doesn't have enough money. It doesn't have enough young people to pay for the pensions for the older people. And so, with all this shit going on, the government just slipped in a few amendments to the pension law, which basically raised the potentially it didn't let them enforce it, but it potentially raised the age for people to get their pension payouts up to 10 years, up to 7. I believe it was 10 years. I read this earlier this afternoon. Up to 75 years old, and did a bunch of little other things, which would basically, and I think lowered the requirement, or made some other part-time workers and other things. Basically expanded the pool of people who would pay into the pension system, which, because they don't have enough money to pay for it. And it's just funny that that happens right a few weeks after they just spent a shitload of cash on Corona bailouts and everything. And again, like I'm not gonna get into that, but like already the Japan. If you just research like the economics of the Japanese economy, it is so fucked. Like so fucked. Like, to be honest with me, oh gosh, should I talk about this shit? Should I talk about? Are we gonna go there? Are we gonna? All right, we gonna go there. Let me go there with you guys, okay? I'm gonna go there with you guys. I normally don't go too deep into this shit, but I'm just gonna. Me personally, I think this whole situation eventually is gonna lead into some type of monetary issue. We had the .com bubble and crash in the early 2000s. If you were there for that, we had the Lehman Brothers collapse in 2008, which was a real estate issue. This time, I think because of all this money that's being circulated, we're going to have a bond crisis. We're going to have a national solvency crisis. That's going to come of this from all these banks creating a lot of fucking money. I'm not going to get into it. Okay, but a lot of, these bond, creations and money printing. That's the easiest way. Money printing that's going on. That's really, it's gonna get crazy. And this situation kind of mirrors. Like again, the George Floyd situation kind of mirrors with some shit that it just looks like fucking Grease, and I think like, yeah, I could see shit like that, never mind, I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but because this is not the podcast for that. This is not like Akil conspiracy talk, but just watching these type of moves that the Japanese government is doing, is very transparent why they're doing this. And it's very transparent why they're doing this now. They passed it on Friday, like the last day before the country reopened, right? Basically, like right before, when everyone's focusing, hey, we're reopening, hey, we're flying jets over Tokyo, and then they slip under the fucking pension reform bill, like right as like everyone's focusing on, they're flying jets all over the fucking place, and no one notices that they just completely reformed the pension program. Like, shit like that is kind of how governments move, and regardless of where you are and where you live, you just need to really be aware of shit like that, especially from a monetary perspective, because you might wake up one day and be like, in a Greece type of situation where austerity and a whole bunch of other shit can come of it, and if you think people are hitting the streets now, like they might even lay the groundwork for that shit, with this shit. So I don't know, man. Like, sorry, again, let me just say this. If you don't think like this, you come here for information about Japan and stuff like that, my apologies. These are just my views, my personal opinion. If you're completely against what I'm saying, that's totally cool with me. I'm just, I don't normally talk about stuff like this on this platform, but again, it's pretty much a heavy kind of mood today. So I just, and this article kind of is in the same vein as what I was talking about earlier. So That's all, man. That's all I got for you guys. Again, next time, Rod, the topic we went back and forth on email. I'm definitely gonna do that next time. But for now, I just had to kind of speak my mind on the situation from how it feels to be in Japan. Again, like I'm not really trying to rehash what I'm sure you've heard a lot, but that's how it feels today to be in Japan. And if you're coming here, if you live here, you know, those are emotions you're gonna have to deal with. Like, you're gonna have to wrestle in within yourself. It's like, you're on the shores watching, the ship, the Titanic go down, or not the Titanic, but a ship go down, sinking. It's like you're on land watching a ship sinking. I mean, even though I'm technically on I'm technically on an island, but it it kind of feels like that. Like there's so many rough waters going on all over the world, and I'm just in this like serene ass fucking country, and it's just like, what the fuck, like it's just like a weird Twilight Zone kind of world. I don't know. That's kind of how I feel. So anyway, yeah, this coming up week, I'm gonna start work again. So next episode, I'll have probably some updates for you for that. Gonna start riding the train again, which is gonna be weird, but whatever. We'll get through it. There's a lot of other shit going on. So all right, y'all. Let me get up out of here. Thank you all for listening to my personally. Again, as always, like me allowing me the platform to talk through some shit. Like, yeah. I honestly still don't know how I'm gonna talk to my wife about this shit. Like, cause it's just such a fucking. It's such a heavy conversation. Oh, by the way, though, my wife and I might possibly be doing a YouTube channel together. We recorded some stuff together. I'll see how I'm kind of coaching her through the process of getting it ready if she wants to. We're just recording some stuff now, and in Japanese and English. If she wants to put it online, it's kind of her call. I'm letting her run the show. I'm just kind of backing her up. But if she wants to do it, we'll do it. If it does go online, of course, I'll share the information with you guys. It'll be, the descriptions, everything will be in Japanese. But basically, the format, it was like I'm just talking shit in English, and then she's translating pretty much for me in Japanese. It's mainly for Japanese people. It's not for foreign people. But I think if you're studying Japanese, she's speaking native Japanese. But I think for either both Japanese people or English speakers, like it's pretty entertaining, especially watching us bounce off of each other. So hopefully, I don't expect anything to go online anytime soon. We just recorded like a couple of episodes, and I have to get her editing and all those kind of things. But it's just good to do something with your partner. I think like long term, like especially the way if I can imagine the way the world's going, like more content online is definitely the way to go. So we'll see what happens with that. Again, if or when anything comes of it, I'll let you guys know. But all right, let me just decompress. I'm gonna fucking watch something more lighthearted before I go to sleep or something like that. Just I literally, I'm sorry I started so heavy, but I literally sat here and just watched a shitload of like news coverage from the past few days for like about 45 minutes before I hit record. Just because like I wanted as best as I could to come in it with some type of understanding about the magnitude of the situation, and so I don't know. Sorry, I'm you can probably tell like I'm a little bit embarrassed about like spilling all that shit out, all that heavy shit out at the beginning of the episode. But again, let me know how you feel. Questions for Akil at gmail.com. Rod, always appreciate your comments. I'm looking forward to hearing what you think. And anyone else as well. Yeah. So, all right. Or, of course, Japan according to Akil. So, all right, man, let me get out of here. I'll holler at you next time. Please take care of yourself, your loved ones. Give them a hug. Tell them you love them. And I'll holler at you next time. Peace.